Yeah, here we are. Another beautiful day, making America sacred again. This time I'm so excited to be able to explore the depths of our reality with you, Miss Judy. We're here with Miss Judy Dragon, and I have had the pleasure to connect with you on many outrageous ways. And so now we've got to dig a little deeper, and I really have been looking forward to this conversation in anticipation of what you have to share. And I know it's going to be intense, but it's necessary. And I appreciate you for all that you're bringing and your being. And so, with that, would you please let's start with your introduction of yourself and then let me know what sacred means to you.
Okay. Um, so just to say that my real name, my biological name is Judy Dragon, and that's a very sacred name to choose to do the life that occurred for me. And I've been in the healing arts for almost 50 years, and started off with Jin Shin Jitsu, which is kind of like acupuncture through the fingers. Then I went into clinical hypnotherapy. I studied herbs. I went into theta healing. And through all that, I was a dental hygienist up until 97 when I retired from that so I could go full time into being present for healing for others. And my specialty is healing trauma from childhood abuse. I'm an author of 5 books on the subject.
You are definitely well versed through experience and by being the student and the teacher and continuing to deepen and evolve through that. And I appreciate you because you really are a pillar in our community to help bring the strength back. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I wanted to um, go into the topic of what is sacred. And so for me, what isn't sacred? Because everything is an aspect of creator of all at different vibrational levels. And to me, the creator of all was, and always will be. It's that frequency of love, unconditional love. And so even in the densest frequencies, there is still that spark of creator. And that goes with using our virtues and the law of free will and agency that operates on these planes of existence. So for me, I use my work to develop my virtues like discernment, truth, faith, insight, awareness, curiosity. I mean, there's millions of virtues. And that is a big part of my soul journey.
That. Well, and your way of being is just so comforting in itself. And I understand it's taken lots of training and what you carry, like you said, with your name, it's quite powerful medicine.
Yeah. And it's actually my totems. And so I went on a journey for that and I discovered it. And so it was validated on the outer world too. So I love those kinds of synchronicities. But I
Yeah,
want to talk a little bit more about the soul journey, at least mine.
please.
And for me, it's been about learning and the ways that I wanted to learn. And I kind of put out questions like, do we want to do this consciously or do we want to do it unconsciously so that the universe pushes us into looking at things, right?
Yeah.
And then what choices do we make using the law of free will and agency? Do we tap into that creative life force, that unconditional love, or do we use it ego driven? So just questions putting out there. And do we want to struggle? Do we harm others? Do we harm ourselves? Do we blame? Do we shame? Do we guilt ourselves and others? Or have we learned how to take self-responsibility without doing that, but still speaking the truth.
Right.
There's a fine line of discernment with that, you know.
Yep.
And so for me, it's all resonance and alignment. And also, like I said before, like the energy of creator is always there. So there's this sacredness that I live with because of that, knowing that I'm never disconnected, no matter how heavy the frequencies are, no matter how bright they are. This energy is always present. And that is how I healed. So,
It's hard to recognize. I've been trying to kind of isolate but what is this feeling, is this creation or ego? And there's so much I want to chat with you, but to define for people who may not be as well versed, free will and agency, those are big words.
they sure are. And they're innate within us as humans. That is what Creator has embedded us with to use. Now, people override that or attempt to, and we've heard lots of stories, some of which I'll be bringing up today. Okay. And so they try to control over another, and then people will act in roles of being less than their power, their true aligned power. So there's a play that goes on in our dance of life. And what's important to remember in any journey is to stay in alignment with the highest truth. And that truth to me is creator, and that's unconditional love.
Seems easy, but it's much
It's not
harder.
easy.
I know. And even love isn't like, always butterflies and rainbows. And it's
No, that is definitely, it's like get into realment. What is real?
word.
You know,
Yeah.
what is authentic? I mean, that's what it is for me, at least.
And that's why I appreciate you so much, because it is about, I came from, uh, although I have always had the seed of indigenous teachings, Native American teachings, I'm also a statistic of what happened to Native American lineage and families. And so I have been protected by many prayers for many generations. And like my mother, we were when we came from biker family, and so there's a lot of stuff that just I thought was normal and it wasn't. But
Right.
through these experiences, that's what was real to me, and that was what I learned to recognize, also to protect myself. And so now it's maybe more easier for me to identify that side of life, and by choice, where I rather be the light. But it was very traumatic.
Right. And we're gonna be talking about trauma today.
Yeah.
So you perfect lead in, for how I walked my sacred path.
Yes, I would love for that. Thank you. If you're ready for
Yeah,
that next one.
I am. So I'm a journey woman, and I have been in deep journey work for almost 4 decades. And this is not light work, to say the least. And I discovered ways to travel within without drugs, without medication, to remember and heal what was unconscious and blocking me, because there was a lot of stuff going on. But my sacred body knew, and my guides and angels and creator knew, and I learned how to communicate with them. And so bringing consciousness to all that and what truly occurred in my life has been a really arduous journey. Yet, I want to just say it's all sacred. So I spent the first 22 years of my life being sex trafficked, which involved almost daily emotional and sexual abuse, pornography, snuff films, horrific satanic rituals, witnessing cannibalism, extreme trauma-based mind control, and being experimented on. So let's just take a breath here.
Yeah.
But it appeared that I was just from a chaotic, neurotic Jewish home. That's the appearance, okay? And many knew that my mother was in and out of mental hospitals since I was in utero, as it happened to her mother as well. So this, you can see the generations. Yeah. My mother committed suicide when I was 19. And I remember the details from my perspective and hers, and also from the unconscious repressed level. So I'm intuitive, so I see things beyond, the physical. The siblings and my father, when alive, because my father died, have known nothing of this family history or truth, though I've attempted to present it to them. They haven't taken the journey, though one sibling started it. So they have an extremely limited and dissociated awareness, which they've made sure to spread this deceptive level to my children and my grandchildren. It appeared that I went to school, college, became a dental hygienist, got married at 20, though I was still being trafficked. I moved from the East Coast to California in a hippie school bus with 2 dogs, 2 cats, furniture in the back 2/3, and a husband to unconsciously stop the direct abuse by the mid-70s. So that's when I moved into Sonoma County.
Mm.
But appearances are deceiving, as we all know. I gave birth to 4 children at home, one of them being one of the first midwives in Sonoma County. I always distrusted doctors. I've been alternative thinking and living that way most of my life. The children are grown now, and 2 of them are living in other countries with their own families. We aren't close except for 2 of my grandchildren. I've been a healer and an intuitive, like I said, more consciously for almost 50 years, but since a child. But I didn't know any of this consciously. It came up through the journey. The programmers used my abilities. So it's taken me years to unwind that. So starting in my late 20s, Creator made sure that I was given the healing tools that my soul and my body needed to heal and rewrite the unconscious story with a very different ending and where I could have landed, and to help others along the way.
I'm so grateful you're sharing this because it's divine time, and we waited for divine time, and it's very emotional for me, and I just appreciate that your willingness to share, because that healing that you've done just is reverberating
Thank you.
to help others.
Thank you for acknowledging that. I really appreciate it. So I've had over 100 near-death experiences. The last one was in 2012, where I went into a 6-year Kundalini emergency, and I seizure to death and died. And my teacher brought me back because I would have not come back. So I've straddled between being here on the physical plane and in my 5th plane astral home. And that's of high vibrational, existence. I'd meet masters there, like Yahshua, and he gave me comfort and then told me to return to my body and remember my mission.
Hmm.
More consciously, um, I've seen him since my early 20s, and he'd show up in my dreams and he would tell me, well, I would remember the conversations and the dreams, and he would tell me about the journey that I would need to take.
Wow.
So I had no clue then. I had no conscious remembrance of anything
Wow.
until 1987. And it was at the time of the harmonic convergence. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is.
And most of, so at that time, I was in 12-step programs. And my 12-step friends were reporting sexual abuse. And then I was going through a faltering marriage. And that started my inner process. And that sacred, journey of remembering all the horror and the knowledge and the lessons and clearing patterns and beliefs and processing the emotions, it just ended. Let the April eclipses of last year.
Wow,
So that was 38 years of deep journey work.
definitely.
I never even thought literally it would end, ever.
Yeah.
And that's why I had to go through like a 9-month birthing integration and then time this talk according to the astrology when it felt safest for me, as we just left another eclipse yesterday. Isn't
I
that amazing?
It is. It's interesting too, as I've, been hyper focusing on my impresses or whatever. I can't even speak. I'm so impressed by you right now. But the like feelings I get and recognizing my warrior and my victim speaking and all these things and how the cycles, truly impact us and how all of this that comes in, like you said, everything's sacred. And it's just you dove like deep. Like you went in for, you're not going to come back and get this lesson learned over lifetimes. You're doing it this lifetime.
I am. And I did, which is
A lot
still
of work.
a
Yes.
miracle,
Yeah. Look at you. You are glowing.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, you are.
So after actually the year before, no, it was last year, I published 3 new books on the healing of trauma from childhood abuse through theta healing technique.
Mm.
And that took me 10 years to do. And then I spent another 8 months. So I finished up in November writing practicums, and they'll be published soon. So I wanted to support people because the books aren't novels. They're workbooks. They're how you can work through your trauma, from emotional trauma all the way to government mind control. So I really put so much of my awareness into those, writings, and research, did so much research on it, because I wrote another book in 2009. It was only 100 pages. And, it's basically for theta healers. But this one is for everyone because I have so much info in it,
Mhm.
you know. So
Remind me the name of that one.
it's called Moving Beyond Revised, Healing the Trauma of Childhood Abuse Through Theta Healing Technique.
Great. And can we find that on your website or where do we get that?
It's on the website. It's also on Amazon, so you can get the paperback, hardback, and Kindle. And then we give a discounted price on our website for the PDF
What's your
form.
website?
The Moving Beyond, the Moving Beyond Trauma Project.org.
Thank you.
Okay. So I want to talk about a little bit more about my history and healing.
Yes.
Okay. So the healing had to shed light on some really dark truths and expose those secrets. And to me, that's really sacred.
It definitely is. It's
Yeah,
part of the journey, wouldn't you say?
part of the journey.
Yeah.
So I come from a multi-generational satanic family, both sides. And I would say that I have Khazarian Jewish DNA. So creator plot me, and I agree to this, by the way, because I remember I agreed to do this journey. And of course, that background of the Khazarian Jewish DNA has a dark history in
Would you
itself.
mind talking more about it? I'm not familiar.
Okay, so there was a sect of people who really weren't Jewish back in like maybe the 13 or 1400s, and maybe even before. And yeah, it was before, but then at that time period in the Middle Ages, the head of it was captured by a Turkish uh, emperor,
Mm.
and he gave the head a choice. You either become Muslim, you become Christian, or you become Jewish. And so they said, we'll become Jewish, and they infiltrated and they brought their dark arts into it. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, it reminds me like along the lines when the was it the Phoenicians and the trust was written and such.
Correct.
At,
That was the 12 bloodlines from the Italian. Um, right. Mm-hmm.
interesting how it all connects, and it's like, bloop. Thank you for
That's right.
filling me in on that.
Yeah. And so my ancestors, they came from Ukraine, Russia, and Austria-Hungary, because it was Austria-Hungary, didn't separate until World War One.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of deep trauma there. Um, During my mother's pregnancy with me, I and she were experimented on. At 7 months in utero, my mother attempted suicide.
Mm.
And a repressed memory had me spinning and nauseous at the time. And I obviously remembered what occurred because I was able, actually, my therapist was able to get a hold of the records that this occurred afterwards. So I was like, oh my goodness, there's actually records that she tried to commit
Confirmation.
suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that really validated those repressed memories. Um, so about that happened about 25 years ago. And my therapist called the Maryland State Attorney General's office, and they sent a detective out, and they found my mother's records at Johns Hopkins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was able then, like I told you, to get a hold of them. And the document actually filled in a lot of unanswered questions about my early childhood and life, about the relationship my parents actually had too. So the lies that the family makes up, I have the truth of it.
Mm.
Um, I thought my mother hated me all my life, and perceiving her actions and wanting to abort me. But later, I discovered through a really, really deep forgiveness process, and this happened in 1997, that she actually loved me and didn't want what was happening to her to happen to me, but it did anyways. Um, I've spoken and written about this forgiveness process in other podcasts and in book 3 of and what I recently put out. And she and I had a beyond horrible, tumultuous relationship. Now, that was just, I only remembered on the emotional level, and that's what my family thinks they know about. She was one of my abusers and took me to satanic rituals.
Mm.
But I only knew about the emotional trauma, like I said. The rest was repressed. And the depth of forgiveness and grace that I experienced with my mother, oh, the release of that, it supported me to use this with every perpetrator that hurt me on any level. or any family member.
Yes.
So to me, this was one of the biggest parts of my healing process, to forgive. And it's not what people think it is. People think it's forgive and forget. And then you have to be around who hurt you. Uh-uh. Did you know that Shakespeare made that up, to forgive and forget?
Uh-uh. No.
Well, it was. I put that in my book because I thought, oh, whoa, that's pretty interesting.
Oh, wow. No, it
Yeah,
sounds like a sense of freedom, though.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's the pulling your energy back, because what we often do is we send our energy into someone to say, like, wake up, get what you did, or we use it as protection, thinking we're using it to distance someone. But
Mm,
what we actually do energetically is we connect right into them and run our precious energy into them. We drain ourselves.
it's empowerment.
It's empowerment. And so I'm not saying to feign forgiveness, but I give some techniques, because it's a word, the frequency forgiveness, it's a virtue, and the vibration of it actually protects you. So
Mm,
I have my clients, in their journeys, have them say, I forgive you 3 times. And then I help them release from what the perpetrator taught them,
mm.
because there's lessons in here. And those lessons are attached to the perpetrator. Well, those lessons can be attached to creator.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. It's, yeah.
So the healing, and I learned this on my own. And then Vienna, my teacher, made it even more clear through different techniques to work with.
Mm,
Um, and I consider this sacred and powerful, just like, we were talking about.
definitely so.
Um, so I want to go back to that story I was telling you about in Maryland.
Mm,
So back in 88, after my memories started to come up, I had several police from Maryland involved in my case. And though in 2010, I discovered that the wife of one of the family perpetrators had infiltrated the Baltimore City Child Abuse Division, when I found records of contributions from that person. And I'm like, oh, because my teacher told me in 1999, never call them back again, never call the police back. And I didn't know why. Then I discovered why.
yeah,
And
comfort.
that was the same year that their grandson committed suicide.
Mm,
So everything is a signal of the dysfunction.
yes.
Isn't
Sometimes
that
it doesn't
amazing?
make sense until later. It's so much to process and to actually like, I still in my healing life's a healing journey in itself, right? And it's interesting because you like the forgiveness that you found and how the lessons come in a different way where we think it's something, often it's victimhood. It hurts and it's painful, but when we could turn the page to see the other side of that, it's a blessing and freedom.
It's actually a somatic freedom too. It's not
Whew.
just a mental or spiritual, but you actually feel it in your body.
Yeah, I had
And
no clue
that
what all that.
makes the difference. And in fact, doctors have talked about unforgiveness and how it causes cancer.
Yeah,
So
it's
just to
bitterness.
say how powerful.
It is. Emotions are powerful. What you put behind your, and that what drives your intention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I told you I opened the case, um, I actually believe what was emerging from my unconscious, which is amazing because I only started the journey really in 87. I went into therapy in 85, but the journey, the deeper part, didn't start happening until 87. And so I want to just mention that the grooming and the preparation, this is a little hard to say, for penetration started as an infant. So there is, in these kinds of families, it starts young. My maternal grandfather, whose name was Ben Croster, sold me into MK Ultra Monarch programs at Johns Hopkins. It was an MK Ultra center, and that was in the Phipps clinic, and that was early on. And the doctors experimented and raped and trafficked me to Bethesda Naval Hospital, Walter Reed, UCLA, Stanford Research Project, and many other places. And people can look these up because they're online.
Yeah, it's out now.
It's out now. Yeah. So he also would bring men to rape my mother in front of me when I was less than 2 years old, when my father was at work. And the trauma would dissociate her and me in witnessing it. She would then abuse me after in her dissociated states. My mother had DID, which is dissociative identity disordering. It used to be known as multiple personalities.
Yeah.
The grandfather got money for her abuse and then set me up for the trafficking to his friends and political connections. Okay, so this is in the state of Maryland. I was also used early on in the secret space program at Hopkins and other well-known facilities. And I was sent to different planets, different dimensions, where there was horrific abuse and slavery going on. So we're not isolated, just to say.
Yeah, there's so much beyond our understanding and knowing, and it's pretty outrageous what
It is.
this existence, the existences and realms and dimensions, and yeah, and it, yeah.
And I want to go back and say, just to remind everyone, that in all of this, there is a God spark, a creator spark. We have to come back to the root and the basis of it all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's been my divine protector my whole life, for sure.
Yeah. So I was a prototype for the first generation of some of these experiments, because if you remember, this was the Cold War, and the US was starting to fight communism, and Russia and Korea were ahead, or they thought they were ahead in mind control techniques. The US wanted to catch up. So the CIA had special programs like Project Bluebird, Project Artichoke, MK Ultra, and they were started during this time when I was a baby or infant or in utero. And I was one of their first guinea pigs. Through the healing, I learned that I had an unseen spiritual team who looked after me. Okay. So they couldn't stop the abuse per se, because I had to go, that was part of my mission.
Yeah.
I was to bring the healing to others through the modalities that I took up, and also through my writing as an adult. So I think that's pretty sacred.
Definitely. So it's what Dolores Cannon, first wave volunteers, and it's led the way for second wave, and grateful, we're all learning through your pain. I'm sorry.
As I went through my healing, I thought a lot about the other generations, and I was really grateful I could lend info to them and felt very sad, very sad. I mean, many of my clients, you know. So there were different famous Nazi doctors involved, like Mengele, well-known political and religious leaders like Kissinger, the Rockefellers, and Billy Graham, Hollywood and Broadway stars like Woody Allen, Bob Hope, Hugh Hefner, and a lot more, and elite handlers like Andy Warhol. There were some heads of states and royalties like Pierre Trudeau, the Shah of Iran, Presidents Johnson and Nixon, Queen of England. And they used my mind control programming. They created dissociative states through their torturing and trafficking, and other children and we were used in underground tunnels. This I remember more clearly under DC, and we were shipped to other places around the world. So again, remember, everything's sacred, and I went through 22 years of this, from utero to that point in time. So it was a lot.
Yes, and the like we keep reflecting on how divine the timing is of all this, and where the preparation for you to be present in the time where people are more able to accept the realities of what happens. And just grateful for people like you, because
Thank you.
It's a lot of work that you have to do, and it definitely is needed.
Yeah, the truth sets us free, but first it'll piss us off.
Yeah, I
like
like
that's
all
kind
the
of where we
emotion.
are.
Yes, I do. It does definitely. It drives you to find the other side. It's a choice of which way we want to be.
That's right. So, some people in listening to this might say, how is it possible if I showed up at school or at home? I'm not, just to say, not ready to discuss this fully yet, but there are advanced technologies that have been used for a really long time. And the dark have to tell people what they're doing. So look at the movies or TV. They call it sci-fi, and I call it reality.
Kind of like, what was it, the Esquire? It was a movie, Men in Black, and they would look at the tabloids that were like outrageous, but they were the most factual. It's
Absolutely. And I've seen Men in Black, just to say.
I wouldn't doubt it. I know. Yeah, I gotta keep taking some deep breaths in this.
That's fine. Drink some water, feel your feet,
Thank you. Wiggle my toes.
Wiggle your toes, yes. Put your tongue at the roof of your mouth.
Yes.
Just keep regulation, because this is triggering.
It is, it does. And that's the thing, is it's just healing is it's in layers. Like trauma, it comes layers, and then it opens up things, and just by talking about it, there's things you forget you shoved away. But thank you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these covert technologies are operating through secret CIA or DARPA Black Ops, taxpayer-funded projects and non-human alien technologies, because they have it all, just to say. And this is now being, as you know, discussed on social media. So people can do their research to figure out the rest for now. And there are lots of survivors who discuss this. I'm not the only one. Actually, there are people much younger than me that are talking about it. I had to find my timing different from anybody else's, what felt right for me with Creator. So besides my whole family, or almost my whole family, being involved on both sides, there were neighbors and teachers. And I mentioned before I came from Khazarian Jewish, but I came from a mix of Reformed and Orthodox Jewish family. There were many rabbis involved who worshiped Satan and were part of the ritual abuse. So, in describing one of the synagogues in Maryland about a rafter that I remembered from a repressed memory to a journalist who had worked at the Baltimore Jewish Times, he confirmed my description. And this is where I was hung up upside down in blood rituals. Okay. And this was called Liberty Jewish Center. So I'm outing this. You know, it's like, it's time. And this happened in 2011. So this was a long time ago. I've kept my mouth shut. So at that time, in August of 2011, a movie was even made about one of the rabbis. His name was Rabbi Jacob Max, and having been arrested for abusing a non-Jewish woman who worked at a funeral home around 2009. You can't make this stuff up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's glad that we have access to the information. It helps to just, yeah,
Verify.
with the healing. Yep, it does. We need that confirmation, but it's there.
That's right. So not only did she report him, but there were a bunch of other people that reported being abused by him. And one of those people actually lives in Sebastopol, who is from Maryland. Yeah. So I thought, and I had a conversation with her. So I thought that was really interesting. So the documentary movie that I mentioned was called Standing Silent and was presented at the Jewish Film Festival in San Francisco in August of 2011.
Oh.
The same time I had a memory about Rabbi Max. I mean, talking about the synchronicities, right?
Well, the energy's in the air, and you picked it up on the frequency and the wave, and you were part of the collective.
That's right. And so the journalist that I mentioned to you who was investigating Max, and the journalist, his friend, who's a producer for many famous movies, he filmed that documentary. And I was able to connect, like I said, with that journalist. But after a while, well, I'll tell you a little bit more of the story. So I'm not going to say the whole story, but briefly, I contacted the Woodmore Hebrew congregation at 7 p.m. to report Rabbi Max abused me. And this was from in the early 60s to mid 60s. Okay. And that's when I was a child or a teen, early teen. And I spoke with some older man with a heavy accent when I called, who immediately, when I mentioned Rabbi Max's name and said the accusation, he hung up on me. And I'm like, no one hangs up on me. So I called
fly over
right
there.
back. And I repeated the accusation again. And he responded with a lot of agitation. And he said, lady, that was years ago. We can't help you. And he hung up again.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So at first, I thought to myself, well, maybe that was Max himself. But in recontacting the journalist a week later, he said it was probably someone else. And then he shared that Max was rushed into the hospital. So remember, this was a week later.
Yeah.
He said that Max was rushed into the hospital at 9 p.m. the night I called and died. I know. I
Wow.
know, I know. And I had to sit with that. And that to me was sacred. And I later thought to myself, I went up and I asked Creator, like, what was the truth of this? And I heard the man knew Max and contacted him. That was a matter of 2 hours.
Yeah. It's like, man, his judgment day came.
Karma, well, karma doesn't always work that way, but just to say on this, talk about interesting synchronicity. So I do want to say that my father was not involved in extreme trauma. My mother was, but my father was not. He had what I call ostrich syndrome, and he was emotionally incestual. So Judy would take care of daddy's needs. He was often dysregulated, so he screamed a lot. And when I was little, I tried to tell him what was happening, but he was so overwhelmed with my mother being in mental hospitals so often and attempting to care for three little kids and himself. That was just too much. And he would push me away when I would, like I needed attachment. He'd say I was too clingy. And so you can see where attachment disordering would come into my family.
Yeah.
He was also abused as a child, but he never remembered it. My mother was the identified patient, but then consider that he married a woman who matched his wounds and his autonomic nervous system dysregulation,
Right.
right? So no victims, no victors
Dysfunction.
here.
Right.
Yeah, it's just that enmeshment frequency, we match it. So after he died, when I spoke to his soul through Creator, he told me that he was abused by his father. It was very shameful, you know. And a lot of my intuitive friends told me similar. Both my parents, through their discarnate forms, have shared a lot more information about the family and about their lives. So that has been such a sacred blessing for me to learn that. And again, like I said, I'm the only one in the family who knows it because nobody wanted to know.
I understand.
Um, interestingly, um, without this forgiveness, I don't think that would have happened for me, just to say, to be able to listen to them in a non-judgmental, unattached way
Yeah.
with love. Because I still loved my parents, even though they were over the top dysfunctional.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it until I went through forgiveness.
Yeah.
So,
It's those layers. So that's the thing is that's why I'm like, oh, it's not normal. Thank goodness to my parents. They were definitely some of the first waivers. But yeah, it is intense, intense, intense.
correct.
Yeah.
It's really intense. So, interestingly, I recently discovered that one of my children with one of my siblings and my father's girlfriend pushed my father to sign a paper so that I could never attempt to claim his inheritance. And in the obituary, which I want to say was another synchronistic divine discovery, there was no mention that I existed as his daughter.
Wow.
Yeah. I had talked, because I hadn't talked to him in years due to his toxic accusations and his disrespectful screaming at me when he called. I did write him a very loving letter in 2011, which was part of my forgiveness process with him.
Mhm.
And I told him in that letter that I would be the first person to take him into Creator's light when he died. So 8 years later, he died. And one of my children called me, and I immediately called some friends, asked for prayers, and went to Creator's Energy and had a long talk with my father. So no one in my family knew this, and just to say, I wasn't ever interested in his money. He was never the source of my abundance, ever.
No,
Creator was.
yeah, exactly.
But the betrayals and the deceptions and discovering what they did behind my back in a plot, it showed me the lingering effects of what the trauma patterns that are acted and played out in that family who haven't done their inner work.
Yeah, it's so interesting. What keeps coming to mind is like black sheep or the cycle breaker, and being like, I understand this side of where you come from because of my experiences, and how it is so interesting to watch people on a program, and how even they're in their own way, and as much as you try to share, express, enlighten, heal, it's their own journey, and their choice, and it's like watching things perpetuate in the patterns. And I don't know, maybe you and I have a macro view of things somehow, but I love
I'm
that.
right with you.
Yeah, and then you got to get into details, but at the same time, it's gosh, it is interesting to recognize people just get stuck. It's easier to, like you say, disassociate, and then to really do this tough work.
This work. Yeah, and it's tough work. So in those records that I told you were from John Hopkins, it stated that my father brought me to the doctors for talking like a baby. When my mother was in mental hospitals, I would go around the neighborhood, my grandmother's neighborhood, and call everybody, "Are you my mommy?" I was under 3 years old. And so my sister had been born the month before, and then my mother was hospitalized for 8 months. Can you imagine, that level of attachment disordering,
Yeah, no, yeah.
And so the doctors who evaluated me when my father took me there to Hopkins, they told my father I should go to the Harriet Lane School of Emotionally Disturbed Children. Yes, this was an MK Ultra center.
I was going to say, does it make
Yeah, I figured you would get this.
People, yes.
Yeah. So my mother's doctors and psychiatrists were MK Ultra doctors. And I have their names in the documents.
I'm so grateful for your research. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Creator, all the time. My paternal, sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
He's Creator guiding you, being able to tune in and hear the messages, and to know that there's potence, even though it doesn't always make sense right then. It comes together, and it's so potent.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my paternal grandfather, so I talked to you before about my maternal. My paternal grandfather's name was also Ben, but it was Ben Dragon. He was a Freemason, a wife beater, a child molester, an alcoholic, and was run out of the state of New York by the Jewish mafia with gambling debts. That, a lot of people, I mean, yeah, that was like, great family you come from, right? I watched my grandmother attempt to stop the abuse. Like, she would walk in and see him abusing me, and he then threw her against the wall. He was violent with her. My father also caught him abusing me. And I'll tell you how this all came out, okay? And my father said at the time, "Well, I took you away from him, but then my mother's in the hospital. So I went right back to my grandmother and him,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so you can hear the minimization in my father. That's what the whole family is like. So my father, um, well, my father had, quote, a sister who's really a cousin. So she lived in the family because her mother died when she was really young and she had a brother. And I don't need to go and say more about that, other than she grew up with my grandparents and she suffered from years of depression. And I discovered this. She was sexually abused by Ben. And she told me that no one would believe her. Now consider this was, your great great grandparents' generation. Nobody believed those things then,
Or you don't talk about them.
right? And when I told him that Shirley had told me about this, he said, "Oh, I thought my father was just beating her." Notice the word, just
Yes.
beating.
Justify. Yeah, it's interesting how people will use,
Minimize,
yes, exactly, to make it easier to cope.
because he would hear her screaming and well, dad's just beating her, you know,
It's normal.
right? So where this information came to me was in 1988. I did something really super brave, and I don't support people to do this, but I did because I didn't know any better. And this was before the book with Ellen Bass came out, which was like the Bible in those days for trauma healing. And I did a truth sharing disclosure in returning to Baltimore from California in 1988. I pre planned this meeting for disclosure. In those days, they called it confrontation, but I choose not to call it that because it's a disclosure and it was sacred to me. And I prepared for it for months. And I invited a sibling who lived in Baltimore, my father, a friend, advocate, and a counselor from a center I found that would be willing to do this for me.
Wow, good team.
Yeah. And that is also at the time where I went to the Baltimore City Police and made a report. And also, who was present there was my mother's brother, Stanley. He was my known only living perpetrator at the time that I consciously remembered. I had no idea what danger I actually put myself in at the time. So just to say, God had to be with me because, you know, I talked to the perpetrators, telling them what I was going to do.
Right. Yeah. Gave them
Yeah,
all the information ready. They go prepare themselves.
right. So I had a really big soul journey and mission to do. So when I told the group what happened, he dissociated when I told him that. And he screamed at me. He stood up in a dissociative glare and he attempted to strangle me. He came out with his arms outstretched. The sibling ran out of the room upset that I made a police report. The father went into an ostrich position, putting his head down, which was one of my father's coping mechanisms. The therapist ran out after the sibling, and the friend advocate stood between Stanley and I in case she needed to stop his outstretched hand from aiming because it was aiming at my throat.
Right.
Gratefully, I had 40 people in my SIA group praying for me at the time. Everybody knew this was going to happen. So I had a lot of support to do it.
Yeah.
And additionally, Shirley, so after this happened, I went and talked with Shirley and I talked further with my father. That's how all this other info came out.
Mm-hmm.
Shirley did not know about the satanic ritual abuse. So she was relating to family members who were involved.
Yeah.
She didn't know that I consciously know about.
Yeah.
And I haven't talked to Shirley Soul. She passed on quite a few years ago. Um, and so remember when you were talking before about the uh, scapegoat, you know, the the coping mechanisms we were talking about in dysfunctional homes. Well, my whole family continues to live from that perception. Like there's an elephant in the middle of the living room and nobody talks about it because if you do, you're going to be ignored or threatened or disinherited.
Yeah.
So they talk behind the back. And because I'm an intuitive, and I wake up in the morning in theta state, God talks to me and tells me things. So I find out,
Yeah.
some things I probably didn't think I would ever find out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, those little messages. And they're like, what do I do with this? I'm supposed to do something or it's just going to get louder.
Right, right. So I do have intuitive friends who I will call up. And one of my friends, before I even got the question out, she said the answer is yes. I said, do you want to know the question? She goes, I already heard the answer is yes. So it was like a verification for some stuff that I needed to know.
Yeah, those telepathy lines have been pretty uh
Thin.
yeah, it's awesome. Like,
Yeah,
oh, I don't have to even use the phone. We just needed to
really is.
confirm. Did you make sure you got the message, right? Oh, okay, good. No.
Right. And there was a time in our human history where we all used telepathy.
Yeah.
So,
Accept it. We invite it. It's there. It's ours to receive.
right.
And we should ask for permission, not go in people's brains without permission.
Well, actually, you know how telepathy works? It doesn't work that way
Tell
necessarily.
me. Tell me more.
So, we project our thoughts.
Hmm?
There are people who are really good at picking up the projected thoughts. My teacher did this to me when I was having a conversation and I wanted to focus on something I had brought to her. And we were just chit chatting. And I know we only had a certain amount of time. So in my mind, I was saying, Diana, we only have a certain amount of time. So about 45 minutes in, she looked at me. She just put the book down a little heavy, looked at me and said, okay, tell me what you want to tell me. And I just went, oh my God, you just read my thoughts. And she talked about it in class afterwards. And it shocked me, but I've done the exercises before. We practice these kinds of quantum play.
Yeah, the collecting that. Well, it's interesting. I just kind of off topic. I want to get back in, but I was studying my human design, and my head isn't defined, and I've learned a lot from other people, and so that's how I learn is by your brain. And so then it was interesting because it also as why I could read thoughts. I understand because it take me a long time to get here because I had to study all kinds of people, but you defining it in that way, I'm like, oh yeah, I can pull that out of the collective. That's how I've learned to cope. This thing,
Well,
I'm
it's a
all
gift.
fluttery.
It's a gift. I mean, it could be used as a coping mechanism for sure, but it's definitely a gift. So I
Yeah.
want you to kind of like take that in as an honoring of your abilities, right?
No, I don't mind coping, but yes, it is a gift. I appreciate because I'm a fluttery being, and I don't have that earth anchor, which I'm like, oh, I recognize that. So go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
so just to say about the human design, I'm a projector 2/4.
So yeah,
So
yep, that's why. I
yeah.
love it.
So I was talking about the family before. So just to say that two of my children were abused in a daycare in Forestville between 1978 and 81. Probably people in your audience might have known about River Child Care, and they referred people to this daycare that was run by the Orr sisters at the time. It was located off of Champs-Élysées in Forestville, and then they moved down to Rio Vista. In 1981, Barbara actually told me that she was moving to Fort Bragg, California. where later in 1984, 40 children were ritually abused through the Fort Bragg ritual abuse daycare case. I knew nothing about it at the time. I didn't know until 14 years later, in 1995, through two filmmakers, their name was McCulley's, was their last name, who produced material for therapists and police on satanic ritual abuse and stopping that, and also the false memory syndrome, which was going pretty heavy at the time.
Mm.
They told me about Barbara Orr and her sister, and I went into shock there. I was there with a friend, and after almost passing out and crying hysterically, I mean, what, you know, a mother's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
I later called the children's father to tell him. He called the Mendocino police, and by that time, the sisters had long fled, you know, California. I heard later that Barbara Orr had taken a job in Illinois through social services for girls who had been sexually abused in their families. Aren't we hearing about these kinds of homes now? Yeah.
Unfortunate. It's like growing up, I was in rough neighborhoods and had a lot of friends that were in and out of foster care, and you would see these things happening, you know, and we didn't feel we had any power to change any of it. And it's real, people. It's real.
It's real. So I talked to the therapist who was involved in the Fort Bragg case, and her name was Pamela Hudson. I bought her book. She told me not to tell my children until they graduated high school. Okay. So I discovered more truth and awareness through a woman named Noreen Gosh. Now, this name might be very well known. She was the mother of Johnny Gosh, and he was kidnapped in 1982 as a 12-year-old newspaper boy. You might remember this, in Iowa.
Yeah.
He's like one of the first kids as a milk carton kid.
Yep.
Yeah, who had gone missing. He was taken into an elite sex trafficking ring. This, you know, I guess people heard of the
Franklin.
and the Franklin cover-up. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So John DeCamp, who was the former senator of Nebraska and who wrote the, you know, Franklin cover-up, he came to Sonoma County in the 90s to discuss all this. So I had a bunch of friends who attended, and he discussed the sex, you know, trafficking, the satanic ritual abuse by politicians right in Congress and within different branches of the government. So this had been talking about, but people, you know, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah, breaks my heart. And the Hannah Boys Center in Sonoma, they were involved with it. And
in Sonoma, yeah, I had a friend who worked over towards there, and I knew there was stuff going on.
You don't, yeah.
So Noreen and I actually stayed in communication for 8 years, and I actually connected with her through the Art Bell show in 1999 and contacted her. And actually, my first book, which was called Multiple Journeys to One, was advertised in her book, Why Johnny Can't Come Home. So she and another man named Doug Millar, who would go all over the country to these satanic ritual abuse conferences, he connected me. Both of them connected me with Ted Gunderson. You know who he is?
I knew the name. Remind me.
He's the former head of the LA FBI. He's now deceased. But he came to my home in 2002. And we talked for a couple hours. He took my first books on the road after the discussion, and Ted was involved with the San Francisco Presidio ritual abuse case, the McMartin case, where the children spoke of, you know, tunnels underground, and which, by the way, just to say, they did find them. You know, people say they didn't. I have documentation. They found them.
That's with the
He,
daycares and the Presidio, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
The
The,
what?
the daycares and Presidio with the kids.
Correct. I actually took a client down there. She wanted to show me where she was abused.
Yeah.
We also discussed the Fort Bragg case. I think that Lieutenant Michael Aquino, who was a known Satanist, and in fact, he had an office in Santa Rosa, just to say, I think it's 66 was the number. Yeah. He was part of all three of these ritual abuse cases. Yeah. And just to say, he was one of my perpetrators. So there was another man named Peter Chernoff. I'm speaking locally because you guys live here and I want this info in your community.
Thank you.
So there was a man named Peter Chernoff, and that man, Doug Millar, for some reason said, I really want you to talk to Peter. He's in jail. So he took me into the Sonoma County jail to talk to Peter. Peter was very dissociated. I know they must have had videos running at the time. And he's telling me about being a chauffeur to politicians in Rohnert Park and being used at the Bohemian Grove. And Peter's videos are on YouTube. So he's public.
Yeah.
You know, he's been talking for a long time. But different than me, I didn't want to talk publicly being dissociated.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to be present in my body. And so just going back to Noreen, she was a really good psychic. People don't know that about her. And she knew what happened to Johnny intuitively because we would talk about it.
Yeah.
And Johnny actually did come home for 2 hours and then he fled again. So this was a long time ago. But she needed to go through the law enforcement and before Congress and TV shows that she was on. And that's why Johnny came home for those 2 hours, because she was on the Lisa's show. And she would always say, Johnny, if you're there, come home. So my second child was also abused at another a local daycare. And he had really strange symptoms like the first one. And when Noreen, I had Noreen, I said to her, can you describe the person? And she described the sweater. And then she described him. And I'm like, oh my God, I know who it is. And I almost confronted that person years ago, but I didn't have any solid legal proof.
Right.
Right. And I just trust that my adult child will remember someday what happened. I never shared that information. Remember, I said there was a timing, and so that's going to be part of that journey.
Yeah.
So the question we started off with was kind of like walking that path that's sacred. So you can see how knowledge and truth and disclosure are sacred. And even though it's really been painful, emotionally wrenching, death defying, exhausting, and it's just all been sacred. And no one really understands the journey would ever say that the healing from extreme trauma is easy, because it's not. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I honestly never thought I would make it to the end. I thought I would have checked out a long time ago. I was pretty close in some points of my process. So, you know, people think, oh, you just have to regulate yourself and then you're okay. That's just step one. So there's being willing to look at your body presentations, the somatic responses. There was something called ACEs, which was, you know, stood for adverse childhood experiences. a study done for about, back in the 80s and 90s, a study of different numbers they would, put to different symptoms from dysfunctional homes.
Mm-hmm.
And the body keeps a score. It's all there. No matter what they do to chemicalize you, to try to take your memories away, every cell in your body knows.
It knows.
It knows.
We can't hide from ourselves, can we?
No, we cannot.
It there. I know. It might be waiting to be woken, but or to be loved.
Yeah. Well, everything's about unconditional love. Even the dark, give us a contrast so that we can remember who we are.
Yeah.
I just want to take a sip. My throat is getting dry.
I just enjoyed this because just being in your presence is healing. And I am grateful that you did make it through your journey and that you have the experiences that will really help deepen that offering that you give. Because we can't just come up here and be like, oh, like you said, we're just going to regulate and fix it and just snap out of it. And that's kind of how we've been conditioned, just to get rid of it. And then all of a sudden it creeps up on us as some sort of ailment or dis-ease, and the or
Right.
shattered personality, or there's so much. I also want to make note, I love the name of your book, Journey to the One. Say it again.
Oh, that was my first book.
Yeah,
Multiple Journeys to One.
I love
So,
that.
it's on Amazon, but I don't sell it anymore, so it's used copies or whatever. But those were stories of, uh, I would say, 7 local women. Were they all local in the Bay Area, who went through a journey of integration of their parts.
Mhm.
Do I think all of them actually integrated? No, but they shared their story at the level that they could, and that was sacred, to be part of a collective and to hear what it was like for them you know
Thank you for that. It is a theme I'm recognizing in myself as far as have you heard of new regression therapy?
I have heard of it, but I don't know what it's about.
It like regression therapy, but new regression involves all dimensions and realms and healing past lives and clearing all kinds of outrageous fun. Um and with that I had gathered that my part of my journey is to collect my soul parts, or collect my shattered pieces of my personality when this existence, and that's what the regression therapy helps with. It's hypnosis in essence. And then the new regression therapy takes it to the next level to gather all of my pieces from all of the dimensions. And that's where the name of your book, the first one, it just rang for me. I was like, oh yeah, that's where I would to one. I want to be wholesome in one, aligned and wholesome.
Well,
So
that's an interesting topic in itself. And we do that in theta healing. That's all part, because we work from the time you were conceived to now, your genetic lineage, your history level. So that would include the land that you walk on, because it picks up energy. That would include past lives, if people believe in that, or spontaneous experiences, because everything is just a moment,
yep.
just a moment. And then the soul between times. So through theta healing, I can recognize all of that. I remember who I am on all those levels. Soul fragments is a really big part of the healing, but we have a very, very fast way to do it. And so, but when people have a dissociative disordering, to pull so many fragments back at one time can do a complete overwhelm. Plus, the inner child will throw it out.
I can see
So
how that would work.
it was like, no, 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 it's way too. Because remember, you're pulling in the feelings, the emotions, and the memories into it too. So I do it differently. And all of that's in the books, the latest books. So different from how a lot of shamanic work does, doing it through Creator gives a different way to do things non-dualistically. And it's all like it's very much like the non-regression you were describing, except I take them through the inner child sometimes, if it's this lifetime, if it's other, because I've done probably 350 past lives because I used to be a hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
And so, I can trance myself and then I just remember, I write them down. Everything is journaled.
Yeah.
So I have past lives and I have all my memories. And so, it's very similar to what you were saying.
Yeah, I resonate so much with it. And I'm just so excited that we're connecting. I know you have, I could keep you here all day, but you have how much time for me left?
I have probably maybe another 10 minutes. And,
Okay.
and I just wanted to kind of pull it together because do you have time? Where are you at?
I am here. I'm good to go. Yeah, I had to change the screen. You got frozen, but
Okay.
I am good. So now we're back on action.
Okay. So just wanted to say that besides the somatic, there was the emotion. Because when you have, from extreme trauma at least, the emotions are usually dissociated out. And for me, I told you what my human design, but my Enneagram is 8. So my, emotion out front is anger.
Mm,
I could slam somebody down real easy. I have worked not to do that, and I go to my 5. And
mhm.
so I observe. I stay in my observer, which is the best position for myself. But with emotions, people tend to project and, they don't stay with their own responsibility, owners and owning their feelings.
Right.
It's like somebody else made me feel this way.
Yeah. It's all their
And,
fault. Always their
and
fault.
it's not, nobody can make you feel.
Yeah.
You feel what you feel. And when you can own those experiences,
Power.
that's powerful. And I talk about this all through the new series. Then there's the memories. Okay, so we have conscious memories. So that's the prefrontal cortex.
Mhm.
We have suppressed memories, and suppressed memories, they're like things you forgot, but oh yeah, that's right, that happened, right?
Mhm.
And then we have repressed memories, which are a completely different part of the brain that bypass conscious remembering, and they go to different parts of the brain, like the hippocampus or the amygdala or the autonomic nervous system, right? So, interestingly, it was like last month, and it was more like a suppressed memory as I hadn't connected the dots fully. I was on social media and I was reading about Antoine LaVey, who is a Satanist who wrote the Satanic Bible. And Antoine was very big in Hollywood back in the 60s and 50s, okay, just to say. So I remembered that my former spouse brought that book into our marriage in 1972, which I thought was pretty darn weird at the time.
Yeah.
And he always wore black until he started to work as a teacher years later, where he wore colored shirts. When we got divorced, he attempted to literally shove that book right back at me to take it away. Probably because I was going, I was probably triggering him, particularly in telling him about the involvement of his family in the rituals,
Yeah.
you
Wow.
know?
Yeah.
So perhaps people who are listening have instances where something flashes to complete a thought, and then it turns out the sign was true experiences. So I'm just kind of like showing that as a pattern of awareness.
Yeah. There's, yeah. Well, let's just put it out there. There are Sonoma County is a hub, and there's lots of people who may not have yet recognized these things.
So as you probably know, 90% of our beliefs or our consciousness is unconscious, and only 10% is conscious. So to go within, to go meet the inner child, to do, or inner children or altar parts, you
Mhm.
have to go inside. just to say that I had DID. And that's why I wrote that book, Multiple Journeys to One. I
Mhm.
had 28 separate parts, and they identified as being between 2 and 21 years old. They did not look like me. Now, a lot of my clients, they look like the client. Mine never did. They were totally different.
Wow.
And they would sometimes overtake my body, my adult self, and that's called somatic hijacking. And that wasn't particularly fun, especially in front of my outer children, because they would see me switch. My niece would see me switch, and she would even say, like, Aunt Judy, where'd you go? Like she was intuitive.
Yeah.
Um, so from fully recognizing I was DID, because I didn't know, people would call me on the phone and I would leave a message saying, "Hi, this is Judy and Associates." I call them my associates. So it sounded like a business, right? So from the time, it was only 2 years that I integrated. And I didn't plan it. I didn't even know it was happening at the time. It was a 9-month process. And in fact, the word integration terrified my parts. Just terrified. I'm like, they thought I was trying to kill them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they thought it was death.
We know patterns. We like the least path to resistance. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Right.
Yeah.
So the memories surfaced from the parts, and then there were new parts. And then I went to different healers, and one of them removed all these entities. And she said the entities were my inner children, but they weren't. She was wrong. But it changed a complete rearrangement in my spiritual, psychic, somatic, emotional. It shifted something huge when those entities left.
Yeah.
And the energy between the parts got very close. And then in that 9-month birthing process, on February 9th of 2095, I never heard from them again.
Wow.
I was in shock. I was hysterical. I drew it out for my therapist at the time. I said, the space went away. And all I heard them say for the last time is, "We are you." And that was the end.
Mm.
And I cried and cried for months because I didn't know. I didn't know how to survive.
Yeah.
I had the parts that I couldn't say, "Oh, Jonathan did this," or, Marianne did it. It was like, it's Judy.
It's you. Yeah. You had to take
Hey,
ownership of all of it.
yeah.
The
So,
new regression therapy actually is a Archangel Michael healing, and it does also help to clear entities and oaths, poverty oaths, vows, things that we don't know we might have contracted, entities and hooks and all kinds of tethers. There's so much. Clearing work is important. Then you
right. And you know what?
your being in
That's
control.
exactly. We do all of that in theta healing. All of that is included. So it's very similar work we're doing, you
Yeah,
know?
it's all that's what's cool. It's yes, I love this stuff. Well, I love this stuff.
Not easy, but love it. Yeah.
No, it's not easy, but it's worth living for.
Right.
Yeah.
So, anyways, when I merged, that was over 30 years ago. And there were still some fragments I had to deal with, and I still had a lot of memories, but I had to use my somatics and an inner child that was me to work it through
Mm.
until last year. And yeah, we use a digging process, ask questions, to get people down.
Yeah.
So I just want to say very briefly about the mind control, because people are going to probably wonder about that a little bit. Um, that includes severe torturing, and I won't go into all the different ways in which they do it, but I was put into their brainwave states, but they're actually the way they want the child to operate. So there's alpha, beta, delta, gamma mind control programming. And this would mean anything from acting normal, to being sexually trained so that you could extract information out of the people they sent you to for missions. This also includes being a spy, a soldier, and a remote viewer. So I did a lot of things without pay for the military. So that movie, Men Who Stared at Goats,
Word.
that was a real thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of my perpetrators was in that movie. He didn't actually play himself, but his name was Colonel Stubblebine. Isn't that interesting? And also think about the sleeper programs. You know, the sleepers, they call them sleepers. These are kids that were put under MK Ultra and they were traumatized like I was. Think about Columbine. Okay, those boys' father were military.
Yeah.
And then there was the Montauk projects. The Montauk projects were the time travel. And I was involved with that as well. So just to
What about
say,
the GATE program?
what?
The GATE program.
I was not part of that, but I have clients that were. And, you know, those children were taken out of their classrooms into special rooms, you know, and tested. But I think, and some of them were trafficked, just to say. And they were looking for smart kids because they wanted to see what kind of programs they could put them in. So that did not happen to me, but I know of it. I've done my research on it because, like I said,
Oh, part of it.
yeah.
There's all these aspects of how how people can find themselves in these circumstances and not realize even that they become victim to this.
So just to kind of wrap this up, okay, there's a basic structure to deprogram people. And I write about that in the book. And also just to say that as a collective, we've been through one of the biggest presentations of mass mind control in deception and lies and the propaganda that's being exposed. You know, what we lived through in the past 6 years, but wait till people start to see our real history, like you were talking about before, and how they have deceived us, right? And so that's part of the reason why I moved out of California, because I saw too many people literally drink the Kool-Aid and I couldn't watch it anymore. So I just had to do what I needed to do to take care of things. And I want to leave the audience just to say that I do have a connection to Epstein, but I don't want to talk about it now. And also, in going to the beginning of where we were talking, I'm just inviting people in to being open to the lessons of their experiences and to learn to take a pause and to make conscious choices using that free will and agency. Okay. And do it through through source of all, get the highest truth, feel that divine connection. And I would like to just do a fast meditation just so everybody can feel that.
I would love that.
And to just leave the audience with, what about you? Can you witness darkness and know that the love and light of Creator is more powerful and will see you through it? So that's kind of where, and then I'll take you all on meditation.
Love it. Holy, holy, so sacred. I'm so grateful because this is, that we needed this. And I am very hopeful that people will tune in and connect with you. And, it's the mass healing that we're about to embark on. So, or we're in it, and it's just going to continue to get bigger. So
It is. And I just want to also say, I don't take on new clients. I have the not-for-profit, and we have people that are trauma educated there that
Perfect.
can work through the theta healing technique, and they can read about it on the website. I have other things that I am being called to do because I want to be part of I'm part of a not-for-profit that I help, I mentioned, and I want to see free centers created for the healing of trauma. And that has already started from thought to form. It's already, the connections are starting to be made. So it's very exciting because I know the struggles I went through in trying to have therapy. And I don't want that to happen to others.
So grateful you said that too. I actually, before we came on live, which I would love to help with the free trauma healing. And so I am going to be doing free retreats and things. And so somehow if we could tie that in so that people could at least, dip their toe and then, delve into what you guys are developing. However that look, we definitely want to co-create.
Okay, I love it. Co-creation is what I'm about.
Yeah, well, I'm ready to meditate.
All right, here
that
we
was
go.
that was a deep, powerful, yeah, heavy conversation.
So, everyone, just allow yourselves to receive a breath and let it go. And continue breathing and remember that everything is imagination. So allow yourself to imagine this beautiful, beautiful energy coming up from the ground. It's going to go up your feet and through all your chakras, your energy centers, very quickly through your crown, forming a beautiful ball of light. Notice the colors. Notice the feeling. Make it big. This ball of light that you're within or part of is going to move quickly now, past the moon, past the sun, past all the stars faster than the speed of light, through different striations of light and dark. Keep moving into a beautiful golden light. You're not going to stay there. Keep going into a thick, jello-y area. Keep going. You might see shapes or colors or hair tones. Keep going. You're going to see a rectangular shape. It's large. Go through it into a white, tingly light. This tingly light goes on and on. Maybe you'll see pink or blue way far away. But it's a white, tingly light that goes right through that ball of light that you are. Feel that. Say to yourself what you call creator. And say it's requested to send me unconditional love now. Thank you. It is done. It is done. It is done. And watch that energy just move right through your body. All the way down to your toes. You can do this anytime as you bring that energy right above your head. Imagine it rinsing off and drying off. Let it come all the way through your body into the earth, pulling up that grounded energy, bringing it back up through your feet, and then to the top of your head, letting it disperse, grounding you right here and now, knowing you are a spark of this energy. You can open your eyes.
Ooh. The world is bright and I can breathe and I'm loved.
You are.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on for
Yeah.
this conversation.
I've been awaiting this time, and I'm so grateful for you to be one of our pillars to spearhead this healing, this mass healing that's upon us. And it's first part is awareness. So here we are.
Here we are. So have a beautiful rest of your day,
Yes.
and I'm going to go out dancing.
I love that. Well, so many blessings to you, and I'm just so grateful. We'll have to come back together, co-create some more stuff, do some more healing work, and sharing the beautiful message that your journey has brought to us. So thank you so much, and
Thank
on your
you.
dreams.
Bye bye.